Tonight, Russia is still not done yet with its full invasion in Ukraine, as first war crimes trial of Russian soldier by Ukraine set to hold. Ukraine goes on the counter-offensive as Russians fall back. Finnish leaders say Finland must apply to join NATO without delay. European Union oil buy increases pressure on Russia, but hindrances remain. And U.S. and Chinese president applaud Marcos Jr. on Philippine presidential win. Good evening and welcome to our studio here at ECWA Television Africa with international news stories. Ukraine to hold its first war crimes trial over Moscow's continuing attack, bringing a 21-year-old Russian soldier to stand, Kyiv's top prosecutor has announced. According to a statement on Wednesday from Prosecutor General Irina Venediktova's office, Vadim Shimarin is accused of killing a defenseless 62-year-old civilian on February 28, firing an automatic rifle from a car window to stop him from reporting a group of soldiers. Later, his group was hit. Himself and 4 other fleeing soldiers stole a car from outside the village of Chupakivka, added the statement. The civilian, who was not named, riding his bicycle on the side of the road not far from his house, the office said one of the military servicemen ordered the accused to kill a civilian so that he will not report them, according to the statement. The Russian service member, who is in detention, faces probable life imprisonment on charges of war crimes and planned murder. Although the day for the trial has not been disclosed by Venediktova, her office publicized a photo of Shimarin but did not give any explanation on how he came to be in Ukrainian custody or what happened to the others in his group at the time of the alleged killing. The Ukrainian human rights group will be closely following Shimarin's trial to see if it is fair, Volodymyr Yavorsky of the Center for Civil Liberties said. Kyiv and Washington have frequently accused Russian troops of committing war crimes since the February 24th invasion. Venediktova's office says it has received reports of over 10,000 alleged war crimes, with 622 suspects acknowledged. The fight has triggered a massive exodus of nearly 6 million Ukrainians, many of whom bear accounts of torture, sexual violence, and indiscriminate destruction. Britain and the Netherlands have sent war crimes investigators to Ukraine to help local and international criminal court teams probing possible mass atrocities, including in the Kyiv suburb of Bucha, where at least 20 bodies were discovered on April 2nd. The United Nations Human Rights Council is due to hold a special session on Ukraine on Thursday. Still on Russian-Ukraine crisis, Ukraine moved on the counter-offensive during week 11 of Russia's war, taking back towns to the north and east of the second-largest city, Kharkiv. Russian forces withdrew to rearrange around defensive positions less than 110 kilometers 6 miles from the Russian border, with Ukrainian units in hot pursuit, according to some news reports. This Ukrainian operation is developing into a successful, broader counter-offensive as opposed to the more localized counterattacks that Ukrainian forces have conducted throughout the war to secure key terrain and disrupt Russian offensive operations, said the Institute for Study of War. Reflecting added confidence, Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukrainian president, for the first time drew stringent conditions on May 6th to enter peace talks with Russia, including a withdrawal of Russian forces to pre-membership in the European Union and accountability for those Russians who committed war crimes. These remarks were a far cry from those Zelensky made on April 10th. No one wants to negotiate with a person or people who tortured his nation, Zelensky said, but we don't want to lose opportunities if we have them for a diplomatic solution. In another place, the war appeared to have gotten to a deadlock. Nowhere did Russia score a significant advance. In Zaporizhzhia, in the country's south, locals reported a Russian unit shot up 20 of its vehicles to avoid combat duty. Sauli Niinisto, Finnish president, and Sanna Marin, prime minister, have publicized that Finland must apply to join the NATO military alliance without delay. Finland must apply for NATO membership without delay, Niinisto and Marin said in a joint statement, saying, "We hope that the national steps still needed to make this decision will be taken rapidly without the next few days." The policy shift prompted by Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and was announced on Thursday, 3 days before neighboring Sweden is expected to follow suit. Finland, which shares 1,300 kilometers, 810-mile border and a difficult pass with Russia, has slowly worked up its cooperation with NATO as a partner since Russia invaded Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula in 2014. The Nordic country had refrained from joining in order to maintain friendly relations with its eastern neighbor until Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February. The opinion among Finns on NATO has reformed speedily after Russia started what it calls a special operation in Ukraine. Finnish public support for joining NATO has risen to record numbers over recent years. The newest poll showed 76% of Finns in favor and just 12% against it, while support for membership used to delay at only about 25% for years prior to all-out war in Ukraine. Now, the European Union is recommending a complete oil embargo against Russia for the first time as Moscow continues its invasion on Ukraine. The bloc hopes Europe will stop importing Russian oil by the end of the year. However, questions remain. Ursula von der Leyen, European Commission President, announced the specifics of a strategic sixth package of sanctions against Russia on May 4th, which includes the bold oil move. As soon as the proposal was announced, Hungary and Slovakia expressed strong reservations. The change will overwhelm his country's economy, and proposed Russian shipments through pipelines should be exempted from a ban that could apply only to sea deliveries, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban says. Both Hungary and Slovakia received between 75% and 100% of their oil imports from Russia last year. Now, the Commission wants all EU members to halt all Russian crude oil imports within 6 months and only import refined products such as petrol, diesel or kerosene into the European Union until the end of the year. Moreover, the EU seeks to ban shipping and insurance companies from dealing with Russian oil. Maria Shigina, visiting senior fellow at the Center on U.S. Politics and Power and the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, said, according to reports, this measure aims to leverage Russia's high dependency on Western insurers and shippers and to deter third countries from backfilling. The absence of a European energy embargo currently constitutes the major weakness in the Western sanctions regime. Most European Union sanctions against Russia so far have appeared from EU Council decisions and regulations and are fundamentally amendments to sanctions enforced on Russia after it invaded Crimea in 2014. Since the beginning of the current war in February, the EU Council has continued to amend these decisions and the accompanying regulations, which are enforced by EU law. For von der Leyen's desired complete ban on Russian oil to be imposed, all 27 member states must vote together on a set of terms, amend previous decisions, and allow the Commission to serve as the main enforcer for the regulations. Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic, Croatia too is considering an exemption. Bulgaria also has reservations. On politics, the President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, and Chinese President Xi Jinping have congratulated Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s presidential win in the Philippines after the son of the country's former dictator declared victory and pledged to be a leader for all Filipinos. On Thursday, Biden congratulated Marcos Jr. in a phone call. The White House said in a statement, underscoring that he looks forward to working with the president-elect to continue strengthening ties with the Philippines, a long-standing treaty ally of Washington. The president said he wants to expand bilateral cooperation on a wide range of matters, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis, economic growth, and respect for human rights. China's President Xi Jinping also spoke with Marcos Jr. on Wednesday, according to reports from China, with the Chinese leader stressing that the two countries had been partners through thick and thin. I attach great importance to the development of China-Philippines relations, and I'm willing to establish a good working relationship with President-elect Marcos, adhere to good neighbor lines and friendship, Xi said. The Philippines sits on the forefront of U.S.-China strains, while some analysts say Marcos Jr.'s win spells a potential blow to efforts by the U.S. to push back against China, its key strategic rival in the Pacific. With an initial count almost complete, the incoming leader, popularly known as Bongbong, has more than 56% of the vote, with at least twice the number of votes as his nearest rival, Liberal Leni Robredo. The unequivocal victory has also raised worry over an added erosion of democracy in the Philippines. More stories on tonight's news. Several Sri Lankans escaped Colombo as authorities meet to deliberate crisis. Sri Lankans are crowding buses in the commercial capital, Colombo, to go back to their hometowns as leaders of political parties prepare to meet after Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa resigned and went into hiding on a military base. Hundreds of people were on the move after the government relaxed an indefinite curfew at 7 a.m. on Thursday. The curfew will be reimposed at 2 p.m. The island nation, fighting its worst economic crisis since independence, was engrossed by violence earlier this week after supporters of Mahinda Rajapaksa attacked an anti-government protest camp in Colombo on Monday. 9 people were killed and more than 300 injured during the clashes in total, police said. Days of violent retaliations against government figures associated to the powerful Rajapaksa clan trailed as protesters swore to maintain pressure until the president also resigned. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Mahinda's younger brother, on Wednesday cautioned on anarchy. Protesters scattered graffiti on Mahinda's home in a southern town and robbed a museum dedicated to his father. On Wednesday, Gotabaya said he will appoint a new prime minister and cabinet this week to stop the country from falling into anarchy, as well as to maintain the affairs of the government that have been stopped. He has continually called for a unity government to find a way out of the chaos, but opposition leaders say they will not oblige until he quits over his handling of the crisis. On Thursday, Colombo streets remained quiet, with a few people strolling out to buy essentials. Leaders of political parties will meet with the Speaker of Parliament to discuss the situation later in the day. Hit hard by the pandemic, rising oil prices and tax cuts by the populist Rajapaksa's government, Sri Lanka is experiencing its worst financial crisis since independence in 1948. Usable foreign reserves stand as low as $50 million. Inflation is extensive and scarcities of fuel have brought many onto the street in over a month of anti-government protest, and that had remained predominantly peaceful until Monday. On Wednesday, Sri Lanka's central bank governor said failing to find a solution to the crisis in the next 2 weeks will lead to power cuts up to 10 to 12 hours per day, as well as his own resignation. Dozens lightly injured as China passenger jet catches fire. A Chinese passenger jet caught fire after swerving off the runway in China's Chongqing, leaving lots of people with what were said to be slight injuries. On Thursday, the event occurred as the Tibet Airlines plane was preparing to take off at 8:09 a.m. local time. The Airbus A319-11 jet carrying 113 passengers and 9 crew was headed from the southwestern city of Chongqing to Tibet Nyingchi. Everyone on board was safely evacuated, the airline said in a statement. The statement adding, in the process of taking off, the flight crew discovered an abnormality with the aircraft and stopped the takeoff, after which the aircraft left the runway and all the passengers on board were only lightly injured. In a separate statement, the Chongqing Qingbei International Airport said about 40 passengers with minor injuries were sent to the hospital. Operations at the airport have since come back to normal, and the cause of the incident is being investigated, it added. Talking health, especially COVID-19, since the pandemic began, North Korea reports first COVID outbreak. Since the beginning of the pandemic, North Korea has confirmed its first outbreak of COVID-19, raising fears of a humanitarian disaster in one of the world's only remaining unvaccinated countries as it goes into a nationwide lockdown. On Thursday, reports say authorities detected a subvariant of the highly transmissible Omicron coronavirus variant BA.2 in people in Pyongyang without elaborating on the number of confirmed cases. There has been the biggest emergency incident in the country, with a hole in our emergency quarantine front that has been kept safely over the past 2 years and 3 months since February 2020, according to official report, adding that maximum control efforts were being imposed in Pyongyang. Later, reports also said North Korea's supreme leader Kim Jong-un had called on all the cities and counties of the whole country to thoroughly lock down their areas, with factories, businesses and homes closed down and reorganized to flawlessly and perfectly block the spread vacuum of the malicious virus. The North, which closed its borders in January 2020, had been one of the few countries on Earth not to account an outbreak of COVID-19, although analysts have long stated doubt about the official figures given the country's long, spongy land border with China. Authorities in China are presently fighting dozens of outbreaks of the virus, including in the border city of Dandong, which is the North's major trading connection with its neighbor. Pyongyang halted inbound rail cargo from China in late April as the outcome of the outbreaks, only 4 months after recommencing the service, according to reports. Now in Africa, in Guinea, transition period set at 36 months. In Guinea, the National Council of the Rally for Development, CNRD, has declared a transition period to civilian rule of 3 years or 36 months. On Wednesday, the decision announced places the country at odds with regional partners and the United Nations, who have both called for a much shorter transition period. Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, the head of the military junta, had earlier set the transition period at 39 months. Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya overthrew Alpha Condé in September 2021 and has since announced himself as head of state. He also promised to hand over power to elected civilians. Like Mali and Burkina Faso, 2 other countries in the region where the military seized power, Guinea has been suspended from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. And finally, police colonel sentenced to death by court in Democratic Republic of Congo. The Supreme Military Court in DRC has sentenced police colonel Christian Kenga to death for the killing of 2 human rights activists, Floribert Chebeya and Fidel Bazana. The court named Colonel Kenga, commander of the Simba Battalion, as the coordinator of the operation that took place on the 1st of June 2010. According to the judgment in the appeal trial, Deputy Commissioner Jacques Mugabo was also sentenced to 12 years behind bars, according to the judgment in the appeal trial. Mugabo was one of those who admitted to strangling the 2 human rights defenders. The court considered mitigating circumstances for cooperating with the authorities. According to sources close to the Supreme Military Court, the case is far from closed. The case against deserter General John Numbi, suspected of being the mastermind of the assassination of Floribert Chebeya and Fidel Bazana, is already in the hands of the judges. And the main news again: first war crimes trial of Russian soldier by Ukraine set to hold. Ukraine goes on the counter-offensive as Russians fall back. Finnish leaders say Finland must apply to join NATO without delay. European Union oil buy increases pressure on Russia, but hindrances remain. And US and Chinese president applaud Marcos Jr. on Philippine presidential win. And that's the news on International News Desk. I am Lois Reiki. Good night.